Are Arizonans prepared for disaster striking?
I would say that that's really our Achilles heel, is individual and household preparedness, business preparedness.
Emergency management officials assess readiness and tell us how we as individuals can prepare. It's Arizona Week.
Production of Arizona Week is made possible in parts by a grant from the Stonewall Foundation and by the members of Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your continued support.
Once again, your moderator, Michael Sheehan.
Members of the Arizona Emergency Services Association met in Tempe this week to swap ideas, keep communication open, and hear how they can do their jobs even better. Two messages emerged. State and federal entities are ready for disaster, but individuals and many businesses are not. We spoke with several officials. First, Nancy Ward, Regional Administrator for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. From the FEMA perspective, how does Arizona stack up when it comes to being prepared for disaster and emergency?
Well, you know, Arizona has a multitude of risk from, raging wildfires, monsoons, major floods, severe storms, freezes, and I would have to say that they're very prepared. They have a well-organized emergency management community, very tried and true mutual aid network to share resources, to help each other. I would say if I had to give it a 1 to 10, they would probably be very near 10.
And what resources are available from FEMA to the states and local entities?
Well, certainly during peacetime, we have training and exercise resources, technical assistance on emergency management programs that we have and share with state and local entities. During and after event, we have commodity resources if we need to bring in water, generators, food, emergency power of some sort to help begin the recovery process, to disaster assistance programs that help people rebuild both at the public entity level with schools, bridges, roads, to helping that individual household start to recover from their losses as well.
And how does it operate in relation to state and local agencies? Is it a bottom-up movement because the emergency would occur at a local?
Absolutely, absolutely. We say in the industry, if you will, that all events are local. They begin locally, and certainly at the end of the recovery, it's still local. So we try and integrate our assistance, our assets, our technical assistance wherever it's most needed. And we have a very standardized structure of how to integrate our personnel, our resources, and quite honestly, our money to help them recover. But it is a local event supported by state and federal government.
And speaking of money and resources, the federal budget cuts, have they had an impact on FEMA?
They haven't had really any impact on our programs at all. We're certainly cutting back on our travel, on some training. Our administrator, Craig Fugate, has really positioned the department well in terms of not having to go into furloughs or having to do any reductions in forces. But we are feeling the pinch in terms of our travel dollars and being able to get out face-to-face as much as we would like to.
At the conference, you mentioned in your presentation the Yarnell fire disaster request made of the state to the federal government. What can you tell us about the status of that?
I can tell you that it's still in process. Our hope is that we hear very, very soon. It goes from the state, the governor of the state requests from the FEMA region. We are involved with the state in terms of preliminary damage assessments and evaluating the impacts of that particular event, and then we send it to Washington, and they look at it in terms of, again, the disaster assistance process, and then move it over to the White House for approval. And it's within the DC area. Even I don't know exactly where it is in the process, but my hope is that we hear very, very shortly.
And since it's in DC and off your desk, does that mean you recommend it in favor of it?
Well, that's a pre-decisional a response. I can't tell you whether or not we recommended whether to approve or to turn down the request, but I can tell you that we are ready, whatever the answer is, to help the state in any way we can as soon as we have an answer.
And what would that mean? What help would that mean from FEMA, from the federal government for Arizona?
Well, the governor has basically requested assistance in the Individual Assistance in Households program, basically housing for those who have lost their homes and don't have insurance resources to cover their losses. In addition, the governor has asked us to assist with bringing together entities that can talk through the burn area impacts and what that may mean in terms of the winter and potential for flooding in the future.
So there would be money involved in that? Would it be low-interest loans for individuals? How would that work?
It could be a plethora of things. It could be permanent housing where we actually bring in maybe mobile homes to park on a person's property while they're rebuilding. It could be money to help replace their home or replace their belongings. It could be in small interest loans from the Small Business Administration.
As Ward said, readiness starts and ends locally. Here's a look at what that means from Lou Miranda, Emergency Management Director for Pinal County. He's also president of the Arizona Emergency Services Association. Tell us what the AESA is and what it does.
AESA was formed in 1964 as the Arizona Emergency Services Association. And we're proud to announce that we bring in people from all throughout the state of Arizona dedicated toward providing services in emergency-related type functions. So part of our membership, we have firefighters, we have law enforcement personnel, public works, public health, and even some tribal personnel that attend many of our meetings and conferences. We're solely dedicated to ensuring emergency preparedness throughout the state.
So the idea behind the organization and it getting together on a semi-annual basis, I think you told me twice a year, is that you need to be communicating with one another so that everybody knows what to do when, God forbid, we have an emergency, right?
That's correct. Emergency management and emergency services is all about relationship building. And so we gather personnel from all throughout the state of Arizona and even throughout our region to come and provide information on what's going on within their particular jurisdictions. It allows us to build those relationships so that during an emergency situation, we can all be successful.
Your job as Director of Emergency Services for Pinal County, does that take you close to the people level when it comes to emergency preparedness?
It does, as well as giving me the opportunity to coordinate activities with elected officials, with state and local officials, with many of the organizations and jurisdictions, including school personnel and many of our businesses within our community as well.
Pinal County is one of the most quickly growing counties in Arizona over the last decade. What challenges has that presented for you in emergency preparedness?
Well, I think there's two particular challenges, and one that we focused on ensuring that we have a good message of preparedness going out to our citizens. The first is individual preparedness. We want to make sure that every citizen within the state of Arizona, as well as Pinal County, is prepared for emergencies. That means talking to your families about what you're going to do during an emergency situation. I like to call it the dinner table talks. Have that conversation with your family members about what they would do if indeed the cell phones were out and there was an emergency within your community. Also, preparing an individual 72-hour kit. We preach preparedness for those individuals to say, when an emergency happens, please be prepared to sustain yourselves for up to 72 hours. So we have that dialogue within our community. The second thing is ensuring business preparedness. We recently had an economic business development career fair where we invited well over 120 businesses from throughout Pinal County and gave them information on what they could do in order to ensure that in the event of an emergency, they could sustain their business operations. So we're extremely excited about those two initiatives. We've also had emergency preparedness fairs for our community, The big key issue is ensuring that our citizens and our businesses are safe in the event of an emergency.
Is there a different message for a county like Pinal, which is largely rural, although urbanizing on the northern end and on the southern end, than there is for a county like Maricopa, which is pretty urbanized?
Because we do have some rural communities, the message of preparedness is even of greater importance. Because, as you know, gaining supplies or resources from our county as well as other neighboring counties and possibly the state may take a little bit of time. So we're continuing to preach that educational message of preparedness with our rural communities as well as other organizations and entities.
Do emergency services agencies in Arizona have enough resources to do their jobs?
I think we do. One of the things that we have to compete for is resources, financial resources like anyone else. And the great thing is that we have a network of emergency management professionals throughout the state. All of the counties participate in emergency management assistance compacts. We also have a great relationship with the state where the resources that would be required during an emergency situation can be received by a particular county if necessary.
What kinds of emergencies do you anticipate and prepare for, specifically related to, say, natural causes?
Natural causes, well, first of all, we run the entire gamut of emergency preparedness initiatives, which include natural, man-made, and technological. But according to our natural, we deal a lot with flooding events in Pinal County. That's been our major threat. We also have the threat of wildfires that exist, anywhere throughout the state of Arizona. And we also deal with a lot of other incidences as well.
That high score the FEMA administrator gave Arizona comes via the work of many agencies, coordinated at the State Division of Emergency Management. Here's Division Director Wendy Smith-Reeve. What resources are available at the state level for disasters and emergencies in Arizona?
There are multiple resources. All of our partners, we really outreach to identify what resources they bring so we can best leverage those resources at the state level, at the local level, at the county level. It really is a collaborative team effort to ensure that we employ and utilize resources that are needed for any given event. So not any one agency has everything, but together, collectively, we have what we need to address any situation.
And you mentioned partners. I'm assuming there are private sector partners involved as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our private sector partnerships are very valuable to us at all levels of community.
What is available actually for emergencies? In your presentation, you mentioned a dollar figure that is allocated by law each year for your agency.
That's correct, and we do, whenever the governor does declare a state of emergency and funds are allocated to support that, it's to reimburse the costs associated with those resources that are brought to bear, whether it's personnel resources, equipment resources, any repair of infrastructure that needs to take place on damaged infrastructure. It's to cover the costs associated with all of those items.
And you're talking about public entities, fire departments, flood control districts, et cetera?
Political subdivisions of the state who are eligible under a governor's declaration, so that would be any state agency or any taxing authority. So whether it be a special district or a city or a county, those would be the types of agencies that we engage with.
Is your office managing any disaster declarations right now?
Yes, we are managing roughly 16, I believe, at this time.
And they're all based on wildfires?
No, not solely wildland fire. Some flooding events, some wildland fires. We've had an ongoing drought declaration that really what that event does is it affords us the opportunity to outreach for grant opportunities to support farmers and ranchers each year with drought.
So what other kinds of disasters could, goodness forbid, befall Arizona, other than some of the natural ones you just mentioned?
Well, there's always, cybersecurity that is an ever-growing threat. In my opinion, if anybody watches the news, we see, that threat is definitely out there. And the challenges that brings, the cascading impacts, or maybe an extended power outage, that also would be a challenge that we would have to face, and the cascading impacts associated with that.
Is the 350-mile border with Mexico an emergency preparedness issue, if you will? Are there special steps or planning or preparation or training that need to be taken because of that?
We do coordinate training within our agency, and we really look to the Department of Homeland Security to identify the border security issue. That's really their forte. And so Gil Arantia, Director for the Department of Homeland Security here in Arizona, is the subject matter expert on that topic.
And you're involved with the Arizona-Sonora, or the Arizona-Mexico Commission.
Yes.
Which is largely an economic stimulus entity, but are there emergency preparedness issues there?
Yes, absolutely. We partner with our partners in Sonora. We reach to them and meet throughout the year to talk about ways that we can better prepare together, how we can better respond. There are agreements with sister cities along the border to where if there's an event that occurs in Mexico, we can, and or on the state side, on Arizona side of the border, that we will support one another in suppressing that wildland fire or addressing that hazmat spill or whatever the case may be.
Emergency services planning crosses many areas of expertise, including public health considerations. Captain Kevin Sheehan of the U.S. Public Health Services Region 9 tells us about his role. What should the public think of when it comes to disasters and the Public Health Service and its role in them?
The public, majority of the public will have to understand what the issues are that they have to be prepared for. They also should take consideration of their own personal public health and medical needs. For example, having their prescription eyeglasses available if they have to leave quickly, their own prescriptions, any medical type of needs that they may have for their children or their family. So that when you're in a disaster, you don't always have time to prepare everything. So it's good to have a kit readily available and to include things specifically like your medications and those types of things to help you prepare.
So preparedness for an emergency starts at that individual level.
Absolutely. And it's also, when we talk about community involvement, and it's just important for individuals, families, and your communities to be prepared and to help each other out.
Now, your role after a disaster is to go into an area, let's say an earthquake in California, for example, and mitigate the issues that may be being raised with disease and things like that?
Yes, sir. Our role is, as the federal government, Department of Health and Human Services has in a disaster, is we would respond as part of the federal family under what is called the emergency support functions, specifically emergency support function number 8. What we would do is we would work with local and state responders, emergency management, health and medical personnel, and identify what their needs are. And at that point, we would look within their federal capabilities to determine if we can provide a need that would fill that gap that they may have after that disaster.
Your training, you told me before we came on camera, is in environmental health. What kinds of issues are raised in disasters and the aftermath that affect environmental health issues?
Specifically, it deals with the immediate needs after a disaster are typically acute care medical support, people who are injured. But then again, if you have large sheltered populations or homes that have been flooded, things like communicable diseases can spread more rapidly in an enclosed environment like a shelter with a large number of people. Also, homes that have been flooded could have damage, including mold and other issues that would require some type of mitigation for people before they were able to live comfortably and safely within those homes. In addition, there's usually potable water issues where the water system has been impacted due to the disaster. And FEMA, obviously, within our state emergency management partners, will typically come into the area and provide drinking water until the local government, when the state government can get those drinking water systems back online.
One thing you also mentioned was that for the most part, public health issues are local issues because there are local agencies that are responsible for those areas. But what assistance and aid do you provide in support of what's going on at the local level?
If the local public health agency, for example, has too much work for them to handle at that given moment, we can provide personnel, U.S. Public Health Service officers like myself, and civilian personnel who could come in and augment their staffs. And we've done that in several instances for local public health departments to be able to go out and do things like food service, sanitation, restaurant inspections, potable water assessments, mold inspections, those types of things. We can come in and help them do that on a temporary basis.
What kinds of deployments are underway right now in Arizona in connection with the operation that you oversee?
We don't have at this moment any deployments in the state of Arizona.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a great thing. And we work closely with our partners at both Arizona Department of Emergency Management and in Arizona Department of Health. And those are vital partnerships that we have with those folks to identify needs, to plan with them for disasters, and to provide them anything that they may need, of which we can provide that capability to them.
Are we prepared for disaster in our city, county, or the state? 3 of our guests give a mixed response. From a preparedness point of view, first of all, organizationally and governmentally, is Arizona ready for a disaster?
Absolutely. And I would say that what I mean by that, yes, absolutely, is that they're organized, they're experienced, they have the right people in the right place to make decisions. But quite honestly, no one entity can bear and shoulder the challenge of a large-scale event. No governmental agency certainly can, either at the local, state, or federal level. We all need to be part of that team, and we all need to come together to minimize the impacts to those disaster survivors and impacted communities. So while they're ready to work together, they're ready and organized in a way that if they need federal support, we can integrate that federal support into their operations because, again, as you said, all events are local.
And then is the individual citizen prepared? First of all, aware of the need for preparedness, and then taking action to be prepared?
You know, Mike, I would say that that's really our Achilles heel, is individual and household preparedness, business preparedness, in terms of, for the businesses, in continuity of their business operations. Do they have a plan for notification to their employees? Do they have a plan to ensure that they can get up and operational in an alternate space if they needed to? And conversely to the individuals and homeowners, do they have a communication plan? If their parents are separated from children during the day, something happened during the day, how would they communicate? Knowing their risk of their community, what kinds of risk does a certain community have, their community have? Who's in charge? How will they get their emergency notification information? And then to get a kit. Hopefully that folks are preparing for 3 to 5 days with water, food, medications, things to support their pets if they have them, and certainly to be prepared so that the governmental entities can focus on those individuals who are hurt, need rescue, and they don't draw from those limited resources at the time of an event. But it's a challenge that we all across FEMA Region 9 and nationally struggle with, is individual preparedness.
What sense do you have that people are prepared for emergencies on the individual or business level?
That's the message that we're actually trying to get out to most of our public. We've done a really good job of ensuring the preparedness initiatives are being brought forth to the community, but we can always do better. The state of Arizona also has an emergency cook-off program where they're competing with different states about what to actually put into your emergency preparedness kits. So we're doing better, but we still got a little bit of ways to go. The message of preparedness still has to get out there to our community.
We work very hard to plan, to exercise and train to prepare for any such event. We look to identify the cascading impacts and what we would do to respond to those impacts collectively with all of our partners throughout that planning process and that training and exercise element.
What about the individual Arizona resident? Is he or she ready?
It's critical that each individual is prepared to support their family in times of emergency and to be prepared with a plan, a kit, and to be informed of what hazards they face within their community. So if they can take care of themselves and their family for at least a short period of time, that allows those first responders to address the broader picture and then come back around and support those individuals as well. You know, it's just like the kids are going back to school right now. And so they're going to be participating in fire drills at their school. When was the last time you had a fire drill in your home? So that's something that you need to plan for and talk about as a family. What do you do in certain situations, and where, you know, if you had to evacuate your home, where is a meeting place? Where's your central meeting place? Have you updated the contact information within your child's backpack? You know, who's the critical points of contact? If mom or dad is not available, who's that next person in line? So that's information that you need to talk about as a family. And AZEIN, our Arizona Emergency Information Network, has information about preparedness, about personal preparedness and building a kit, what items should be included in a kit, developing a plan, and we encourage all Arizonans to take that action.
All of that means we have work to do. To help, we've put a link to the state's emergency preparedness website with step-by-step instructions on what everyone should be doing on our website, azpm.org. That's our program for Friday, August 9th, 2013. For Arizona Week, I'm Michael Cheehan.
Production of Arizona Week is made possible in parts by a grant from the Stonewall Foundation and by the members of Arizona Public Media. Thank you for your continued support.